So this is a constructor, right? And this constructor calls. So this constructor is there here. And within this constructor, I'm writing self dot p equal to 300 and self dot q equal to 400. So A is a base class and B is what here? Derived class. So what will happen when you create? What will happen when you create object of a B class? See, whenever you create object of derived class, okay. So whenever you create object of derived class, now this is, what is the name of this object? Object B. On creation of derived class object or object, it will call the constructor, right? And this constructor having a reference of which one? Object B. And within B, it will create two properties. One is P and one more is a Q. So what is the value of P here? 300. And the value of Q is a 400. Yes. The value of P is a 300. And the value of Q is what here? 400. But is it X and Y of A? Is it X and Y of A are inherited in B? No. This X and Y of A are not inherited in what? B. Because inheritance means they should inherit these properties, right? So this X and Y of A should be inherited in what? B class. But is it X and Y of A class is inherited in B class? No. In order to inherit, what you have to do is, you have to call. Now, if you want, you can see that. If I'm writing obj B dot X, obj B dot Y. So print obj B dot P and obj B dot Q. So I'm writing obj B dot X and obj B dot Y. Obj B dot P and obj B dot Q, right? So what will happen? So what will happen when you create object of this class here? So what will happen if you run this? It is given error saying that B object has no attribute called which one? X. Because X and Y of A are inherited in B. No. To inherit, the constructor of derived class must call the constructor of which class? Base class. So how this calling is done? By using super. Okay, super function is there. And this function will return the reference of which object? Superclass object. And from superclass object, you are calling which method here? Init method. So until unless call constructor of superclass, until unless you don't call the constructor of superclass, is it the properties of superclass are inherited in subclass? No. So you have to call it. Now in this case, now you can see 100, 200 and 300 and 400. If you don't call the constructor of superclass, is it X and Y of A are inherited in B? No. Okay, it will not inherit the X and Y of A inside what? B. To inherit X and Y of A inside B, you have to call the constructor of which class? Superclass. So what will happen when you create object of B class? So when you create object of B class, so B class object is created here. And this object is created by calling which one? Constructor. And this constructor is having a reference of B object. And this is calling the constructor of which class? Superclass. So it is calling the constructor of which class? Superclass. And superclass constructor is creating how many variables? Two variables. One is x and one more is what? Y. And the value of x is 100 and the value of y is 200. After executing this constructor, return to the subclass constructor and then allocates memory for p. And what is the value of p? 300. And what is the value of q? 400. So the B object is having how many variables total? Four variables. So that is a x, y, and p, and one more variable is q. But actually, x and y are the properties of which class? Base class. A class or base class are inherited in which class? Derived class. But how that is done? By calling constructor. So if you don't call the constructor, the properties of A class or base class are not inherited within derived class. So variables or properties of base class are not inherited automatically within derived class. So in order to inherit, so properties of base class. So within derived class, okay. So derived class constructor required to call, okay, in order to inherit properties of base class, in order to inherit properties of base class within derived class constructor required to call the constructor of which class? Base class. In order to inherit the properties of base class within derived class, so derived class constructor is required to call the constructor of base class. Derived class constructor required to call the constructor of which one? Base class. And this is done using which method? Super. Okay, super is a predefined function. Okay, it is a predefined function in Python. It is a predefined function in Python. So this function returns a reference of which object? Superclass object. So using this object, okay, subclass or derived class access the members of which one? Base class. Now it is a predefined function, and using this function, the subclass members can refer the members of which class? Base class. Using this, subclass members can call the members of which class? Base class. Subclass members calls the members of which class? Base class. And that is done by using a function called which one? Super. So it is a predefined function in Python, and this function returns a reference of superclass object. And using this object, subclass or derived class access the members of which class? Base class. So how subclass access the members of base class is by using super. So private members of base class, private members are private members of base class are not accessible within derived class. So only public and protected members of base class are accessible within derived class. Only public and protected members of base class. Only public and protected members of base class are accessible within derived class, but no other members are accessible. No other members are what here? Accessible. No other members means private members are not accessible. Only Private members are not accessible, but only public and protected members are accessible within what year? Derived class. Okay, suppose so there is a class here. Okay, assume that. So there is a class called which one? Person is there. Now this is a single level inheritance. So what is this inheritance? Single level inheritance. In single level inheritance, there is only one base class and one derived class. Okay, so there is a person. So what person is having? So person is having name, but name is what here? Private. So if it is a private, it is not accessible in what? Derived class. Okay, then how it is accessed with the help of methods? So I read one public method called read name. What is the name of this method? Read name is a method. And what this method will do is, it will read the name of the person. I'm saying enter name. So self dot name equal to input enter any name. You are trying to read the name here. Input enter name. Okay. So this method will read the name of a person. And there is another method called print name. And this method will print a name of the person. So one is reading, and one more is what? Writing. One is reading and one more is what? Writing. Okay. So here you are trying to input the name and here you are trying to print the name. So you assign the value to the name of the person and you are trying to print the name of the person. So there is a person called employee. So employee is a person. Employee is a person. Okay, so now you can see employee is called which class? Child class or derived class? Okay. Now person is called as a parent class. Parent class or it is called as which one? Base class. Okay. So here I am writing in it. So here now child class constructor should call the constructor of which class here? Parent class. So child class constructor should call the constructor of which class? Parent class. So which one is a parent class here? Person. Means it should call the constructor of which class here? Person class. But how it is done? By using which one? Super. If you don't call it, that name is inherited or not inherited? Not inherited. Okay, so apart from this, what employee is having? Salary. So total how many properties employee is having? Two properties. One is called as a name and one more is called as which one? Salary. Two properties are there. Then I want to read salary of the employee. I want to read the salary of the employee and you're reading salary by using a method called which one? Read salary. Now where I'm saying self dot salary equal to input. So float of input and here I'm saying enter salary. So read salary is a method and this method you are trying to input the salary and this salary is assigned to one variable called which one? Salary, right? So there is a method called print salary and this will print the salary of the employee. So here you are saying salary. Now self dot which one here? Salary. So here person is a base class. Person is a base class and employee is what here? Derived class. So employee class derived from which class here? Person. and it is called the constructor of which class? Superclass. Why it is called the constructor of superclass? Because if subclass doesn't call the constructor of superclass, the properties of superclass are not inherited within subclass. Okay. Now there is a object I'm creating here. So what is the name of the object? Employee. So I create object of employee class. So whenever you create the object of an employee class, so what will happen? Suppose, what is the name of this object? Employee 1. What is the name of the object? Employee 1. So what will happen? What will happen on creation of object? It will call the constructor. And this constructor call the constructor of which class? Superclass. And this constructor create which variable in the employee name. See, methods can be accessible directly, but properties cannot be accessible directly. Not inherited directly. So what is the name of the employee here? None. So after that, it will return to the constructor of which class? Derived class. And here it will create one more property called which one? Salary. And what is the salary of the employee? None. So employee is having total how many properties? Two properties. One is name and one more is a salary. Then how can I read the name of the employee and salary of the employee? Okay. I read the name of the employee by calling employee 1 dot read name. So, but read name. See, employee 1 is the object of which class? Employee class. Then Python search for read name method in which class? Employee class. Is it read name method is there in employee class? No. Then what is the immediate base class for read employee class? Person. Then it will search for the read name in which class? Person class. Is it this read name is accessible within the derived class? Yes. Because is it read name is a public or private? Public. If I'm writing it as a double underscore, then it is what? Private. But in this case, read name is a private or public? Public. So you are reading the name of the employee. And after that, I'm saying employee 1 dot read salary. When I say employee 1 dot read salary, now it look for the method read salary in which class? Employee class. Is it read salary method is there in employee class? Yes. So just input the salary of the employee. So employee 1 dot, I'm saying print name. So when I say employee 1 dot print name, what Python look for? Print name method. So what Python look for? Print name method. Where it look for print name method? In employee class. Is it employee class is having a print name method? No. But for employee class, which one is a super class? Person class. If it is not available in subclass, then it will search in which class? Super class. But this searching is done up to the class hierarchy. May stop. Okay. So print name method is there. Yes. It will just access the name of the employee. Name of the employee. So print name returns a name. So employee 1 dot, I'm saying printer. What is that? Salary. So that will print the salary of the employee. That will print the salary of the employee here, right? So once you run this, now you can see input is asking to input what here? Name. So you have to input the name here. So this is the name of the employee. And this is what here? Salary of the employee. So there is a name and there is also which one? Salary. Okay, now this is what will happen if you are working with the single level inheritance. But it is required always. It is required always to call the constructor of base class method within the derived class. If you don't call the constructor of base class within the derived class, If you don't call the constructor of base class within the derived class, so properties of base class are not inherited in derived class. Properties of base class are not inherited within derived class. If you are not doing it, right? Right now, this is in single level. So there is a multi-level inheritance. You have to write number of examples only. So there is a multi-level inheritance. If a class, if a class derived from, if a class derived from another derived class, it is called which inheritance? Multi-level inheritance. If a class is derived from another derived class, if a class is derived from another derived class, so there is a class and there is a B class and there is also which class? C class. So C derived from B, B derives what here? A. So this you can call it as which inheritance? Multi-level. Multi-level inheritance. This is called as a multi-level. If a class is derived from another derived class, if a class is derived from another derived class, for example, there is a class, again I'm taking the class called which one? Person, but this time I'm writing a constructor. I'm writing a constructor with arguments. Now this constructor receives the name of the person. Okay, this constructor receives the name of the person. So where I said self dot name equal to what? Name. And there is a method called which one? Print name. So there is no method to modify the name of the person. Okay, there is no method to modify the name of the person. So where I'm saying self dot name, so this will print the name of the person. So there is a class. There is a class called which one again? Employee. So employee is a person again. So employee inherits the properties of which one? Person. Now employee is having a constructor. What this constructor will do is it will receive the value of base class constructor and it also receive the value of which constructor? Derived class constructor. So now this is receiving how many values here? Two values. So one value you are sending to the constructor of which class? Base class. That is to initialize which one? Name. One value you are sending to the constructor of base class. That is to initialize which one? Name. Okay. And one value is belongs to which one? Derived class constructor. That is salary. So here, because base class constructor is with argument. Now I have to send a value to this constructor or not? Yes. But who is receiving the value of this constructor? The constructor of which class? Derived class. Then who is calling the constructor of base class here? Constructor of derived class, right? And the constructor of derived class is receiving the constructor of which class? Value of constructor of base class. And it is also having a constructor value belongs to which one? Same class. So there is a method called print salary. And this will print the salary of which one? Employee. So self dot which one now? Salary. So there is a person and there is what here? Employee. So employee is a person. Employee is a person. So there is a class. Okay, so there is a class here. And what is the name of the class is? There is a class called suppose here I'll take employees. No employees having a job. Okay, we'll take job here. Instead of salary, I'll take job here. So employee is having a job. and this you can call it as job of the employee. Now there is an employee called worker. So worker is a employee. Worker is a employee and employee is a person. See, worker is an employee and employee is a person, right? So this is multi-level. Now this is called as which class? Derived class. And this is a derived class. For which class it is derived class? Person. But it is a base class for which one? Worker. For worker it is a base class. For person it is which class? Derived class. So what worker is having? Worker is having name. Okay, worker is having name, a job, as well as daily wage. Worker is having how many properties now? 3: name, a job, and daily wage. Now this is calling the constructor of which class here? Base class. By sending how many values? 2 values. One is a name and one more is a job. So how many values are sent here? 2 values. One is a name of the person and one more is a job. Now self dot. Now there is one more property called wage equal to double. So this is a print job and this is a print daily wage. So here I'm trying to print the wage of a employee. So self dot what is that? Wage. So this will print the wage of the employee, right? So now employee is having total how many properties? For example, I'm creating a worker. So worker 1 equal to which one? Worker. I cannot create like this because now worker is having a constructor with how many values? 3 values. Then I have to create the object by giving how many values? 3 values. That is a name, a job, as well as what? Wage. So worker is having a constructor with how many arguments? 3 arguments. I have to input how many values here? 3 values. That is a name of the employee, job of the employee, and one more is a wage. So you have to input the name of the employee. Now this is a name and there is a job of the employee. Okay, this is some job. Okay, this is a job and this is assume that a daily wage like this. Okay, so here I created object by sending how many values? 3 values. So what is the name of the object here? Worker 1. So what will happen on creation of object? It will call the constructor. What will happen on creation of object? It will call the constructor and this constructor receive the name and this constructor receive the job and this constructor receive what here? Wage. And this constructor is calling the constructor of which class? Super class. And this constructor receive how many values? 2 values. One is a name and one more is job. And this call the constructor of which class again? Super class. And this constructor is called by sending which one? Name. So what will happen? Worker is created. Worker is created with a property called which one? Name. And the name of this employee is what here? Naresh. Is it execution of constructor is completed or not? Yes. It will come to the constructor of which class? Derived class. And this constructor create one property called which one? Job. And what is the job of this employee? Manager. Okay, now after executing this constructor, it returns to the constructor of which class? Worker. And here it will create one property called which one? Salary. And what is a salary? What is a wage? So what is a wage of this employee? Some 5,000. The wage of this employee is how much here? 5,000. But the data which is there inside this is what here? Private. Okay, so it is a responsibility of derived class constructor to call the constructor of which class? Base class. But when it is calling the constructor of base class, if the base class constructor is having arguments, then derived class constructor should send values to that arguments. Then who is receiving the values of the base class constructor? The constructor of which class? Derived class. Constructor of derived class is receive the values of which class here? Base class constructor. How many values it is receiving? Name, job, and one more is what? Wage. So it is receiving how many values here? Three values. That is a name, job, and one more is which one? Wage. Three values it receives. One is a name, second one is a job. Yes, it receives how many values here? Three values. Okay, right. Then after that, I'm saying worker one dot print name. Then I'll say worker one dot print job. So worker one dot print what is that? Wage. Worker one dot print name, job, and one more is what? Wage. So once you run this, now you can see the name, job, and one more is what? Wage. Okay, but here we try to divide. We try to divide the content into how many classes? Three classes. So when you required, you are inheriting the properties of one class inside another class. Here, worker inherit the properties from employee, and employee is inheriting properties from which one? Person. Right? So this is which inheritance? Multi-level. Multi-level means more than one level of inheritance. Or if a class is derived from another derived class, if a class is derived from another derived class, even it is called as multi-level inheritance. So there is one more inheritance is there called multiple. There's one more inheritance is there called multiple inheritance. So multiple means if a class is derived from more than one base class. If a class is derived from more than one base class, okay, it is called multiple. It is called what here? Multiple inheritance. If a class is derived from more than one base class, then it is called as a multiple inheritance. For example, there is a class A is there and there is a class B is there. And there is a class which one here? C. Okay. There is a class C and C class is derived from A class and C class is derived from which class? B class. So this is multiple. No. If a class is, this is multiple, right? So C is derived from how many classes? Two classes. A class as well as what here? B class. It is inheriting from both the classes, A class as well as what? B class. Okay. So this kind of inheritance, you call it as which one? Multiple. This kind of inheritance, you call it as which one? Multiple inheritance. Okay, right? We can also use super in multi-level inheritance as well. What is this question? What question here? We already used what using? If you are not using, we already used here. We already used here. What is, we already used here, no? So if a class is derived from more than one base class, if a class is derived from more than one base class, then it is called as a multiple inheritance. But how this is done? For example, there is a class A is there. So here, class A is having one constructor. So I'm writing here constructor of A class. So constructor of A class. So there is a class B, and class B is also having a constructor. So this is a constructor of which class? B class. Constructor of A class and constructor of B class. And there is a class C derived from A class as well as what? B class. Now C is which class here? Derived class, which is derived from A class as well as what here? B class. So multiple. So how many parent classes are here? 2. But here, if you want, in order to call the constructor of base class, you'll use which one? Super. You'll say super dot init. But super will refers to which object? Immediate super class. What is the immediate super class of C? A. Means the super will refers to the init method of which class? A class. The super will refers to the init method of which class? A class. But doesn't refers to the init method of which class? B class. It refers to the init method of A class. The super will refers to the init method of A class, but not B class. Then how to inherit the properties of B class? Even I should call the constructor of which one? B class. But super will refers to the members of which class? Immediate super class. And C immediate super class is which one? A. Then this will call the init method of which class? A class. But it doesn't call the init method of which class? B class. Then how can I call the init method of B class? To call the init method of B class, I should use class name only. See, members of base class are accessible with class name also. So I'm saying here B dot which method? Init method. I call the B dot init method by sending the address of which object? C object. Okay, by sending the address of which object here? C object. Because super will refers to immediate which class? Super class. But how to call the constructor of another class? Then use what name here? Class name. And dot init method by sending the reference of which object? Current object. So what is the current class object here? C. So after that, I'm writing one message here saying that, so constructor of which class? C class. So what will happen when I create object of C class? So C is a derived class, right? So when I create object of C class, the C class object is created. Okay, C class object is created by calling the constructor of which class? C class. And that will call the constructor of which class? B class. And sorry, that will call the constructor of which class? A class. And then call the constructor of which class? B class. It means it inherit the properties of A class. It inherit the properties of B class into which class? C class. So until unless you don't call the constructor, the properties of base class are not inherited in which class? Derived class. Until unless you don't call it. Now you can see constructor of A class and constructor of B class and constructor of what here? C class. But here super is referring to the constructor of which class? A class. Because what is the immediate superclass for C? A. So it will call the constructor of which class? A class. And then you are calling the constructor of which class? B class. And there is a message constructor of which class? C class. Right? You can see constructor of A class and constructor of B class and constructor of which one? C class. Right? So these are the classes what you have A, B, and one more is what? C. And C is the class which is derived from A class as well as which one? B class. Yes, that also you can call. You can call the constructor of A class also with the class name. Okay. So because we have a super, I use super. Otherwise, you can call with what name? Class name also. So members of superclass can be accessible within subclass with class name also by sending a reference of which object? Self. By sending the reference of which one? Self. Why not be a? Why A is the immediate superclass of C? Why not B? What is your answer here? What is your answer? What is the immediate class? C immediate class is derived is which one? A. वही चिल्ला चिल्ला के बोल रहा हूँ यार मैं. Sir ना. Immediate class is A. Immediate class is A. What dear? I said immediate class is A. You write like this. B comma A. If you write B comma A, what is a superclass? Immediate superclass is what? B. So here I write A comma B. You don't listen continuously, yeah? Acha, acha, okay, right, no problem. Yeah, you have to write it. If it is with a constructor, you have to write with that. Okay. You have to write with that. Okay. Like suppose now I said no, this is inheritance is very much useful in application development. So when you are working with which one? Django. Okay, like in Django, for example, Django is a framework, right? It is a framework. Okay, suppose I said inheritance allows you to build new classes. Inheritance allows to build new classes using which classes? Existing classes. For example, I want to building a new class is nothing but building one new. Okay, building a new class is nothing but building one new data. For example, I want to develop one model. Okay, how to develop a model? So that is defined by which one? Framework. What will I do? I want to develop one model called some student model. What is student model? Represent student data. But how to develop a student model? By inheriting properties given by which one? Framework. So there is a class. What is the name of the class here? Model. Okay, student model is a model. It means student model is inheriting all the properties of which one? Model. This is called as which inheritance now? Single level. But in application development, a class might inherit more than one class. Like in Django, you call that classes are called which classes? Maxin classes. So Maxin means which inherit how many classes? More than one class. It inherit more than one class. Inherit more than one class. So this is one example where this multiple inheritance is used. Inheritance is very much useful when you are working with the application development, because you try to build a class or you try to build a data type by using the properties of which one? Existing. You try to build a class or build a data type by using which one here? Existing data types. Existing data types. I should know that. Okay. So it is required to call the constructor of base class. It is required to call the constructor of base class within the derived class, right? So there is a class. Again, I'm taking, there is a class called which one? A. A is one class, and this is having this is having which one? Constructor with the argument. So where I'm saying self dot is having a property called x equal to x. And if you want to return the value of x, I write a method called getX. And what this method is doing is return the value of x. But this is a constructor with argument or without with argument. So there is a class B, and class B is having init method, and this will receive the value of y. So self dot y. This y is a local variable, and this y is what here? Instance variable, right? So there is a method called get y, and this should return the value of which one? Y. So self dot y, and this is self dot x. Now there is a class C, and this is derived from A class as well as what? B class. Okay, now this constructor should receive the values of x and receive the value of y, and it should also receive the value of which one? Z. Because the C is a derived class, and this class is derived from how many classes here? Two classes. One is A and one more is what? B. Now here I have to say super dot what? Init. So I should send which value? X value. And I should say B dot init. Then I should send which value? Y value. Then self dot Z equal to Z. Now C is having total how many properties? 3. Two properties. I mean, one property is inherited from which class? A class. What is a property inherited from A class? X. What is a property inherited from B class? Y. Okay, and C is having his own property called which one? Z. Okay, so there is a method called get Z. Okay, get Z is a method, and that should return the value of the Z. Now self dot Z value. Now C class is derived from how many classes here? Two classes. One is A class and one more is a B class. Two classes, one is A class and one more is a B class. So when I create object of C class, I create object of C class by sending how many values? 3 values. Because this is having a constructor with how many arguments? 3. So you are giving the input of X, you are giving the input of Y, and you are giving the input of what? Z. So what will happen? It will create object of which class? C class. But this will call the constructor of which class? A class by sending which value? X value. So then it will create a variable X, and what is the value of X will be 100. Then again it will call the constructor of which class? B class by sending the value of Y, and then what is the value of Y? 200. And it is also create one more variable called Z, and what is the value of Z here? 300. So total how many properties are there? 3. X, Y, and one more is a Z. X, Y, Z, right? Then how can I get these values? So I can get these values by saying print, or I can just get these values. Some A equal to obj C dot get X, and B equal to obj C dot, what is this method? Get Y, and C equal to obj C dot get Z. Okay, get Z, so that returns the value of Z. So print, so I try to print the value of X here. I try to print the value of which one? Y here. I try to print the value of X here. I try to print the value of Y. I try to print the value of Z. I try to print the value of X, Y, and one more is what here? Z. So once you run this, now we should send one value here, right? Y. What happened? Y we send? One more is there. Self dot, self comma, Y. Okay, you should send the reference of the current object. What is the value of X here? 100. What is the value of Y here? 200. What is the value of Z here? 300. X is 100, Y is 200, and Z is 300, right? So here two classes are there. One is A class and one more is a B class. So, but in inheritance, it is required always to call the constructor of base class within the derived class. So that can be either single level or multi-level, or that can be which one? Multiple, that can be which inheritance? Hierarchical. So that can be which inheritance? Hierarchical inheritance. So what will happen in hierarchical inheritance is, so here if more than one class derived from same base class, okay, same base class, it is called which one? Hierarchical inheritance. So it is called as a hierarchical inheritance. If more than one class derived from same base class, for example, there is a class and there is a B class, there is a class, there is a B class, and there is what here? C class. Now B and C B and C are derived from which class? A class. Now this kind of inheritance you call it as which one? Hierarchy. If more than one class is derived from same base class, So B and C are derived from which class here? A class. Now this you can call it as hierarchical inheritance. So what will happen in hierarchical inheritance here? Suppose there is a class again. There is a class called person is there. Again, person will take. So person is having a constructor. Person is having a constructor. And what person is having name? So we try to assign value to the name by using one method called set name, where I'm saying self.name equal to name. And there is a method called get name. See, each example I'm writing, each one I'm writing in different types. Okay, so here we try to assign values and we try to read the values, right? So return self dot, what is the value? Name. So person is having a name and assign the value to the name by using a method called set name. Using this method, you are assigning value to the name, and using this method, you are trying to read the value of name. This is a setter method for assigning, and getter method is for reading. Okay, this is for assigning, and this is for what? Reading the value. Now there is a class. Okay, so there are two types of persons. There is a person called which one? Employee is a person. Okay, employee is a person. So what employee is having? Employee is having which one? Salary. The salary of the employee is none, and I assign value to the salary. But here I should call the constructor of which class? Super class. So in order to inherit, I should call the constructor of super class. Okay, self dot salary equal to, I receive the salary here. And there is a method called get salary, and that will return salary of the employee. Self dot return self dot salary. So employee is a class, and this employee class is derived from which class? Person class. So there is one more employee is there called which one? Customer. Customer is also person. Now here we use this person class in how many classes here? Two classes. What is the first class here? Employee. And what is the second class? Customer. So what will happen in this case? Now person is a base class. Person is a base class. Person is a base class. So which one is a base class here? Person is a base class. An employee. Person is a base class. An employee and customer is called as which class? Derived classes. So person is a base class and employee and customer is called which classes? Derived. Now this is called which inheritance? Hierarchical inheritance. The more than one class derived from same base class. Okay. Now what customer is having? Assume that customer is having a name. Okay, customer is having name. What customer is having? Customer is having a name, and customer is also having a reorder level. Okay, see a reorder level or credit limit. Okay, I just write customer is having a credit limit. So customer is having a name, and customer is also having what here? Credit limit. So there is a method set What is the name of this method? Credit limit. And this will receive the credit limit. And where I'm saying self dot credit limit equal to what here? C. So there is a method called, so get a credit limit, and this will return the credit limit of the employee. Okay, right now how many types of persons are there? Two types. One is employee and one more is a customer. Suppose my application required to represent whose details? Employee details. Then I create object of which class? Employee class. So my application required to represent whose details? Customer details. Then I create object of which class? Customer class. But this both the classes are inherited from same base class or not? Yes. So employee one dot set name. This is the name of the employee. Employee one dot set a salary. Now this is a salary of the employee. Then customer one dot. What is this here? Set name. This is a name of the employee. Customer one dot set set what is that here? Credit limit. And this is a credit limit of the employee. But both are inherited from which class here? Person class. I said, what is the advantage of inheritance? Reusability. Which one is reused here? Variables and methods. Which one is reused here? Variables and methods of one class. Inside what here? Another class. Variables and methods. For example, I want to read name of the employee. Then I'll say employee one dot get a name. I want to know employee's salary. Employee's salary equal to employee one dot get a salary. Then I try to print. The name of the employee. So where I'm saying employee one, e name. So I want to know salary of the employee. Then I'll say is salary. So I want to know customer name. So this is a customer details. How can I get the customer name? C name equal to customer one dot get a name, and customer credit limit equal to customer one dot get a credit limit. Get credit limit, right? So here I try to display the customer name and I try to display the credit limit, right? I try to display the customer name. I try to display the customer name and credit limit. I try to display the employee name and employee salary. Set a name. How many underscores? 2 I have given. Now you can see this is the name of the person and this is what here? Salary. And this is again name of the person and this is what here? Credit limit. So salary and this is a credit limit here, right? So this is called as which inheritance? Hierarchical inheritance. Okay. So based on the application requirement, you try to choose. Based on the application requirement, you try to choose one type of inheritance. That can be single level or multi-level or multiple hierarchical, or that can be what? Hybrid. So hybrid you write it. Hybrid you try. Okay, hybrid inheritance. Okay. Then here Inheritance, within inheritance, you also achieve polymorphism by using one concept called which one? Method overriding. So this method overriding comes in what here? Polymorphism. Okay, inheritance even supports. Within inheritance, you are also doing which one? Polymorphism. Within inheritance, you are also using which one? Polymorphism, right? Okay, so we'll see how to work with this method overriding, but not today, but we'll see this tomorrow, right? How to work with this method overriding, right? We'll see tomorrow.